Koto Katoa. Good day, everyone. This presentation is about Objective 4B, the advanced work on scenarios and models of biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services. My name is Carolyn Lundquist, and I'm an associate professor at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, and I also hold a joint position as principal scientist at the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research in New Zealand. This presentation is also on behalf of my co-chair, Professor Shizuka Hashimoto of the University of Tokyo, who is also a member of the IPBES Multidisciplinary Expert Panel. The Scenarios and Models Task Force was established following IPBES 7, and it builds on the 2016 Scenarios and Models Methodological Assessment and the work of the former expert group on scenarios and models. The task force is mandated to implement Objective 4B of the IPBES 2030 Rolling Work Program. The task force comprises 28 members, 5 of which are our fellows, and we're also supported by our technical support unit, which is based at PBL, the Netherlands Environmental Agency. Our task force met for the first time in November 2019 at Bonn in the joint task force meeting, and we have since met a task force workshop in Japan in February 2020, which was a mixed model of both in-person and online, and then we had a further online task force meeting in May 2020. I'll now highlight some of the main achievements between IPBES 7 and IPBES 8. Our task force has 2 main draft deliverables. The first is the provision of support for scenarios and models to IPBES assessments and the IPBES work program more generally. Our key tasks are mobilizing experts to contribute as authors and review editors for assessments and to assist in scoping of assessments. Members of our task force also participate in the review of assessments and scoping reports. That way we can provide input with respect to scenarios and models in these documents. We've also worked with the task force on Indigenous knowledge and local knowledge to draft guidance for the use of Indigenous and local knowledge scenarios. Another role of our task force is to engage the broader scientific community, for instance, through publications on scenarios and models, and this can serve as possible reference material in future IPBES assessments. The second draft deliverable of our task force is catalyzing the further development of scenarios and models to support future IPBES assessments. This work continues the development and builds on the Nature Futures framework, for which further information is available in Information Document 14. The Nature Futures framework was developed by the former expert group on scenarios models in consultation with stakeholders and modeling experts. The framework was designed to enable the scientific community to develop new scenarios for future IPBES assessments, and it is compatible with the IPBES conceptual framework. The Nature Futures framework would provide a framework for the modeling communities to develop models to quantify the impact of such scenarios on biodiversity and on nature's contributions to people. The Nature Futures framework could also be used independently by stakeholders and research communities in a qualitative manner, or by combining qualitative and quantitative approaches in order to imagine examples of new, desirable futures for nature at multiple scales. To date, the task force has produced a draft methodological guidance on the use of the Nature Futures framework, and we have also presented this guidance for future iteration to the biodiversity modeling community at an online workshop in January 2021. The task force has also compiled existing indicators to support modeling of the Nature Futures framework. The Nature Futures framework, as presented here, is based on human values for nature, or different ways of perceiving and measuring the benefits that nature freely provides to people. These can be envisioned as shown here in a triangular framework with 3 corners, each of which represents a different perspective on human relationships with nature. In modern society, the values and benefits of nature are often exemplified by material or instrumental benefits that nature provides. This instrumental value perspective is represented here in the bottom right corner, marked by nature for society. In the nature for nature perspective, in contrast up at the top, the intrinsic value of nature is the most important value, which includes the diversity of species, habitats, and ecosystems that form and sustain the natural world. In the third value perspective on the bottom left, which we named Nature as Culture, humans are an integral part of natural systems, and societies, cultures, traditions, and faiths are intricately intertwined with nature. The Nature Futures framework recognizes that these three value perspectives are not mutually exclusive, and that scenarios more likely are represented by midpoints between corners, allowing for the translation of the framework into a diverse range of nature-centered scenarios. Here, we are presenting our interim work plans for the intersessional period to 2021-2022 between IPIS 8 and IPIS 9 for the plenary for approval. This work plan is also presented in Working Document IPIS 8/7. The interim work plan continues to support the two draft deliverables of the task force in providing support on scenarios and models to IPIS assessments and in catalyzing further development of scenarios and models for future IPIS assessments. For draft deliverable 1, we are presenting a series of webinars on scenarios and models and on the process of development of the Nature Futures framework to support assessment authors. We will continue to participate in document reviews and in mobilization of experts for upcoming assessments, and also to support the use of scenarios and models within these assessments. The work catalyzed to date by the task force is also being prepared for submission as publications to engage the scientific community and to stimulate development of scenarios to inform future assessments. For draft deliverable 2, the interim work plan includes a series of steps to support further development of the Nature Futures framework and its methodological guidance, including an external review process of the framework. Also, the task force will further catalyze modeling case studies that were initiated at the January 2021 modeling workshop and refine the illustrative example scenarios from the Japan workshop in February 2020, which were further iterated by the task force members during 2020. The timeline of these interim activities includes in draft deliverable 1, support for mobilization of experts for the transformative change in the Nexus assessments, and also participating in reviews and advising authors on scenarios for the invasive alien species, the values, and the assessment on sustainable use of wild species. For draft deliverable 2, the external review and dialogues on the Nature Futures framework and methodological guidance are planned for the second half of 2020. This includes consultation with and dialogues with Indigenous and local knowledge community in collaboration with the Task Force on Indigenous and Local Knowledge, and further dialogues with national focal points on behalf of governments in collaboration with the Task Force on Capacity Building. Following these consultations, we will revise the Nature Futures framework and methodological guidance based on feedback and present the feedback or the framework to IPIS 9 for consideration. We also present the draft work plan for the intersessional period between IPIS 9 and IPIS 10 for the plenary's information. The same type of activities are envisioned, linked to the phases of assessments and other work that will be ongoing at that time, both within our draft deliverables 1 and deliverable 2. These activities will continue to support these two deliverables, with deliverable 1 supporting assessments and deliverable 2 further catalyzing the development of the Nature Futures framework. A second workshop with modeling communities is scheduled following IPIS 9, and we will continue to support the scenario case studies initiated at the first modeling workshop in January 2021. We also present an overview of possible activities of the task force related to the Nexus and transformative change assessments. As presented before for 2020 and 2021, the task force activities would include mobilizing experts to participate in these assessments, participating in reviews of assessment chapters, and providing support on scenarios to chapter authors through both webinar presentations on scenarios and in catalyzing publications on the Nature Futures framework. If the mandate of the task force is extended beyond IPIS 10, activities could include participation in further review stages of assessments and continued support in the development of these chapters on scenarios and models. The use of scenarios in these assessments is also envisioned to catalyze further development of scenarios and models to inform future IPIS assessments. Thank you for your attention. Further detail to support this presentation on the Task Force on Scenarios and Models can be found in the information document number 14.